Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I am bringing you 3 keto recipe dinners you can make at home. So stay tuned and I will show you guys how I made these. First up are these keto crab cakes that turned out amazing. All you're going to need is some Parmesan cheese, some pork rinds that I put in a Ziploc bag and then rolled with a rolling pin to kind of pulverize, and then some really finely diced bell peppers. You're also going to need some shallots and garlic, 1 egg that I was trying to be cool with and roll, some mayo, crab, and I use claw meat because it tends to run a little cheaper than lump crab, Dijon mustard, Valentina's, and some Worcestershire that I forgot to add in the. You're going to then melt some butter in a pan and add in your shallots and garlic, and you're just going to cook those until they soften and the garlic becomes fragrant. You then are going to add in your bell peppers and do the same exact process of just cooking these until they get tender, and then you can also season them with salt and pepper in the pan. And then once they're softened, you can just set aside and let them cool to a semi-cooler temperature, so when you add them into the mixture later, they don't scramble the eggs. In a mixing bowl, you're going to add in all of your wet ingredients, so your egg, your mayo, your mustard, your hot sauce, your Worcestershire, however the heck you say it, and then you will combine those things together. Once you've mixed the wet liquids, you're going to then add in your semi-cooled pepper mixture and then combine that into your wet mix. At this point, I add in some seasoning, and I just use Tony Szechuan. Some lemon juice would also be really good in this, and I wish I would have added it in, so I do recommend adding some lemon juice. Next, you're going to add in your Parmesan cheese and your pork rinds, and this turned out really good, and these act as a binder instead of using flour and like panko or breadcrumbs. You are then going to add in your crab meat, and I highly recommend you go through your crab meat and discard any shells. I usually don't have a problem with this and never really do it, but for some reason this particular batch of crab had a lot of shells in it, and we had a lot of shells in our crab cakes. Whoopsie. Also, make sure you gently fold this in and try not to break up the pieces of crab too much. You then want to start forming your crab cakes into patties, and you basically want to make these like you would a hamburger patty. I recommend weighing these on a scale so you get even proportioned. I did about 2 patties that were 4 ounces and then 6 patties that were 3 ounces, and you should be able to eat about 2 of these per serving depending on what your macros are for the day. They are pretty low carb. I believe for 2 it was 3 grams of carbs. I can list the macros down below. And also, once you're done forming the patties, you want to let them set in the refrigerator for at least a half an hour to kind of get them to solidify, so when you're frying them they don't break apart. and that did work very well, I found out. When your crab cakes are chilling, I just went ahead and started my side dish, and I just did some roasted asparagus. I kept it pretty simple. I just added them to a baking sheet with one of those silicone linings and put a dash of olive oil, salt, pepper, garlic powder, and maybe a little bit of truffle dust, and just roasted this for about 20 to 25 minutes at 400 degrees. In the same pan that I cooked the peppers in, I am going to just add some coconut oil down, and I'm going to use this for our frying oil for our crab cakes. Once your oil is hot, you're going to add your crab cakes, and I recommend do not touching them at all until they are ready to be flipped. Don't flatten them, don't do anything. This ensures that by letting them cook to brown completely, they will not break apart, and they have a nice sturdy crust on the outside. So I did about 4 minutes, I believe, per side before I flipped them. After they cooked on both sides, I added them to a paper towel lined baking sheet to just kind of let the excess oil soak into that so they weren't bogged down with oil. And there you have it. These amazing crab cakes turned out so good. One of my top probably 4 or 5 keto dishes I've made so far. They turned out crispy, delicious, they were airy, they were just so good. I topped mine with some wasabi mayo and homemade spicy mayo. A remoulade would be really good on this as well, just depending on what your carb count is for the day. And the asparagus with this tasted really good. Next up is this creamy cauliflower rice risotto, and all you are going to need for this is some shallots, some garlic, some finely diced jalapenos, and some mushrooms, some freshly grated Parmesan cheese, some shrimp, some bacon, some heavy whipping cream, some riced cauliflower, and chicken stock. And I have homemade stock always in the freezer, so I just use my homemade stock. In 2 pans, you're going to get your base and some of your toppings started. In the big red pan, you're going to get some butter and oil melted. And in my purple skillet, I'm going to add in the bacon. While the bacon sautés, you are going to get started on your base. So basically just melting some butter and oil in my big Le Creuset pan. I did like a double batch, so it's going to look like a lot. And once that's heated up, you are going to add in your shallots and garlic, and I ended up adding some onion last minute just because I simply had it in my refrigerator that need to be used up. And if you didn't catch that, I was definitely wearing some penguin PJs. Once everything has cooked for a little bit, you can go ahead and add in some seasonings. Right here, I just kept it simple with salt and pepper. And then you're going to want to add in your mushrooms. So I followed this recipe that I will link down below. I don't know if I like this because instead of a risotto, because obviously the cauliflower does not soak in the liquids, it turned more into a soup. So coming up, I'm going to be adding some chicken stock in with the mushrooms. I would actually try to exclude this part for the next time I make this, just to let you guys know. You can follow the recipe however you like, but next time I think I will exclude this part of the liquid coming up. And like I said, right here, I think I would not put this in next time. After your mushrooms have cooked down a bit, you can then add your cauliflower rice, and then you add some more stock. This part I would add the stock into because you do need to soften up your cauliflower quite a bit. So once you add in the stock, you let this simmer for about 15 minutes until your cauliflower has softened. While your cauliflower is softening, you can head back to your bacon that's pretty much browned at this point, and you're going to add in some jalapeno and shrimp. These three ingredients right here that I'm adding into the frying pan were all things that I added to the recipe. The original recipe was just mushrooms, so I added a little bit of extra just to get it to a taste that I really like. And then you're going to add in your shrimp and cook these until they become lightly pink and no longer kind of opaque. Once the shrimp and bacon mixture is cooked, you can transfer that to a different dish so it's not sitting in the bacon grease. I did eventually do it at some point, but you can still see it kind of cooking. And at this point, my cauliflower rice has softened, so I'm just going to basically incorporate it a little bit more, stir it around before adding the next couple ingredients. Here we are going to add in our heavy cream and our Parmesan cheese, and then you're going to let this simmer for about 15 minutes to let the heavy cream thicken. But if you can see at this point, it really is very liquidy, so I thought it was more of a soup than anything. It does come together at the end, but I would say I would highly recommend eliminating some of the chicken stock in this recipe. You can again season it at this point with some salt, pepper, and again I use my ever trusty truffle dust. I pretty much use it in everything. It is my most favorite. And then once it's simmered for about 15 minutes, you can go ahead and add in all of the bacon, jalapeno, and shrimp into your pot. And here is the final dish. I will say it had all the flavors of risotto, but I don't know. I'm on the fence about it. It definitely fills a void, but I do think it needs to be tinkered with a little bit. The recipe was, the measurements and things like that were not my favorite, and I personally added some of the stuff to it to add some bulk to it, but I did end up topping it with some fresh Parmesan and some parsley, and I will probably make this again, but I do want to tinker with it. I really did like the flavors, so it was all in all a pretty good recipe. last up is my favorite. We make this all the time and it's called rattlesnake steak. First up, you're going to need some blue cheese, some green onion, some jalapenos, and I did leave the stem and seeds in this particular one. You're going to need some bacon, some shrimp, but this is totally optional. I just had them in the fridge, so I decided to use some. And then lastly, you're going to be using some asparagus again. And I prepare these the same exact way I did the crab cakes. I am going to prepare this in a cast iron skillet. It's way too cold to be cooking outside. I believe it was -35 this day. So we are just going to cook everything inside on a cast iron skillet. I've got some bacon in the pan. I'm going to let this brown, but I will say I got a little carried away and let it go a little too far, so I had to take it out before adding in the rest of the ingredients. Once I removed the bacon, I went ahead and flash fried, meaning I fried these super fast, the green onion and the jalapeno. You just basically want to get these pretty sauteed quickly, and then you can take them immediately out. I had transferred everything to a paper towel and then added it into just like a small Tupperware container because I was going to then add in the blue cheese to the bacon, jalapeno, and green onion. I then have my steaks. I already cut a slit down the inside of them here. You can do this one of two ways. You can either get like a skirt steak and roll the mixture inside the skirt steak, or you can get a thicker cut steak and cut a slit down the middle and stuff them the way that I did. My steaks honestly were a little thin, but I was still able to make it work. Then I'm just seasoning it here with salt, pepper, truffle dust, and garlic powder, I believe. And then the shrimp I seasoned with salt, pepper, garlic powder, and Tony Sacheron. Once you season both sides, you can go ahead and open up your little slit. You do not want to cut all the way through, but close to the edge as possible. You're going to pour in the mixture. I try not to touch the mixture so I could also top my steak with it once the steak had finished cooking. And I will say I did end up adding in a couple toothpicks, one on each end of the steak, so to try to ensure as much filling as possible stayed in the steak when I transferred and flipped them in the pan. And in that same pan with the bacon grease on a medium-high heat, I'm going to go ahead and add in my steaks, and I'm going to sear them off for about 5 minutes per side. It's kind of tricky with them being slit. You do need to make sure that the inside is cooked pretty well. So if you do like a more well done steak, I would recommend maybe 8 to 10 minutes, but I found that 5 minutes was perfect and did about a medium to almost medium rare steak for me. Once they were ready to flip, I grabbed my tongs on the side of the filling to try to ensure the least amount of filling to come out, and I began to sear them again on the opposite side for about 10 minutes. And at this point, I'm also going to go ahead and add my shrimp into the bacon grease. Shrimp only take about 3 minutes total in cooking time, maybe a little bit more, 2 minutes a side, so they don't take very long, so I went ahead and added them in once I had flipped the steak. While all this was going on, I was roasting my asparagus, so all I did was add the shrimp and the steak to the plate. I topped the steak with a little bit more of the blue cheese bacon mixture, added my asparagus, and then served it up. But there are my 3 keto dinners, and I feel like these are really good because they don't seem keto. They're so delicious. They're probably 3 of my favorites that I've made so far, and I hope you guys enjoy them. If you guys want more videos like this, go ahead and subscribe and like this video, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye guys!